My name is Natalie, and if you're watching this from anywhere in the world, stay with me, because this isn't just a story about success. It's a story about what happens when someone tries to define your worth, and you quietly decide they don't get to anymore. He looked me straight in the eyes that morning. Not the kind of look that sees you, the kind that measures you and already finds you lacking. He leaned back in his leather chair like a man who had never once been questioned in his life, like a king sitting on a throne built from other people's silence. "We don't hire losers like you." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The confidence in his tone did all the damage. For a split second, I felt it, the old feeling, that familiar tightening in my chest, that whisper in my mind saying, maybe he's right. But then something unexpected happened. I didn't break. I didn't argue either. I just nodded. "I understand," I said quietly, and I meant it. Because in that moment, I understood something very clearly. He wasn't describing me, he was revealing himself. I walked out of that office with my resume still in my hand. The same resume I had spent nights perfecting. The same resume built from years of effort no one had clapped for. My heart was pounding, my hands were shaking. But beneath all of that, there was something else, something calm, something certain. Because what he didn't know, what no one in that building knew, was that this interview, it wasn't my only door. It was just the last one I needed to close. That night, the city outside my window felt louder than usual, lights flickering like 1,000 unfinished stories. I sat there in silence, replaying his words. Loser. Funny how one word can follow you your whole life. Attach itself to your past. Try to sneak into your future. But here's the thing about labels. They only stick if you stop moving. And I hadn't stopped. Not once. Months earlier, when everyone thought I was trying to find a job, I had actually been building something else. Quietly, patiently. While people underestimated me, I was learning. While they dismissed me, I was preparing. I had taken interviews no one knew about, worked on projects no one saw, sat in rooms where I wasn't the loudest, but I was always listening, always learning, always getting ready for this. The next morning, everything changed. Not loudly, not dramatically, just definitively. He walked into the building the same way he always did, confident, untouchable, certain that nothing in his world had shifted. But the moment he reached the front desk, something felt different. The receptionist stood up, nervous, respectful, but not toward him. "Sir, the Director General would like to see you." He frowned, confused, because in his world, titles belonged to people like him, people he approved of, people who looked like power. Then he looked up, and he saw me, standing behind the glass wall above the lobby. My name on the door, clear, unmistakable, Director General. There's a moment when reality breaks. You can see it in someone's face. That exact moment when everything they believed about the world stops making sense. That was the moment I saw on his face. And strangely, I didn't feel anger. I felt clarity. He walked into my office like a man stepping into a story he didn't understand. "What is this?" he demanded. I didn't rush to answer. I let the silence sit between us, not to punish him, but because for the first time, I didn't feel the need to prove anything. "Sit," I said. And this time, he did. "Yesterday," I began calmly, "you told me something." He said nothing, but I could see it, the memory replaying in his mind. "You said losers don't belong here." I nodded slightly. "You were right." That caught him off guard. But what you didn't realize, I continued, is that you weren't deciding who belongs. I am. Power isn't loud. Not real power. Real power doesn't need to raise its voice. It doesn't need to humiliate. It doesn't need to prove. It simply is. And in that moment, I understood that completely. The days that followed weren't about revenge. That's the part most people expect. They think this is the moment where I tear everything down, where I make him feel small, where I get even. But that's not what happened. Because I had already spent too many years living in someone else's definition of me. I wasn't about to build my future on that same foundation. Instead, I rebuilt the environment, not just for me, for everyone. Policies changed. Opportunities opened. People who had been invisible were finally seen. Meetings that once felt tense became spaces for ideas. Slowly, quietly, the entire culture shifted. One afternoon, I passed a group of interns in the hallway. They were laughing, talking about their ideas, dreaming out loud. No fear, no hesitation. And I realized something. This was what I had been fighting for. Not the title, not the office, but this feeling. A place where no one had to shrink just to belong. As for my brother-in-law, he stayed, not because I needed him to, but because I chose something harder than revenge. I chose accountability. You'll work, I told him. You'll learn. And you'll respect every person here. No threats, no cruelty, just boundaries. And something interesting happened. He changed, slowly, awkwardly, but genuinely. Because when someone is finally forced to see themselves clearly, they either break or they grow. Weeks turned into months. The company grew stronger. So did I. But the biggest change? It wasn't external. It was internal. For the first time in my life, I stopped waiting for validation, stopped needing approval, stopped measuring my worth through someone else's lens. And on the last day of the quarter, we held a company-wide gathering. Not something the company had ever done before. People from every level, every department, standing together, not divided by fear, but connected by purpose. I stepped onto the stage, took a breath, and looked out at all of them. I'm not here because I'm perfect, I said. I'm here because I refuse to stay where I wasn't valued. Silence. Then applause, real applause. And in that moment, everything came full circle. 'Cause the truth is, that man who called me a loser, he didn't define my story. He revealed the chapter I needed to outgrow. I didn't win because he lost. I didn't rise because he fell. I rose because I finally stopped believing I needed his permission to. So if you've ever stood in a room, feeling unseen, undervalued, dismissed before you even speak, remember this: their expectations are not your limits. Their opinion is not your identity. And their rejection might just be the redirection you needed all along. And because one day, you won't walk back into the same room asking for a chance. You'll walk in and realize you are the one creating them.